Welcome back to HOA Karen Files, where we uncover the craziest HOA scams tearing communities apart. I'm Caleb Hawk Dawson, a 52-year-old retired Army Ranger settled in Pine Hollow, a rural suburb outside Dallas, Texas. I thought I'd left chaos behind after 20 years of service, until fake HOA enforcers burned my barn, threatened my horses, and tried to fleece my neighbors for millions. Pine Hollow was our sanctuary, wide fields, honest folks, and a love for the land. But when a slick new HOA president rolled in with a pack of hired thugs, they turned our haven into a battlefield. They hit me first, but soon everyone felt the heat. Families, farmers, even kids. I wasn't about to let some clipboard-wielding con artists destroy our way of life. So I called in my old rancher crew, a tight-knit group of vets and cowboys who don't back down. What started with a smoldering barn ended with a reckoning that shook Pine Hollow to its roots. This is a story of grit, loyalty, and taking back what's ours. Saddle up, because this ride gets wild. I'm Caleb Dawson, but my friends call me Hawk. At 52, I'm a retired Army Ranger, with 2 decades of missions from Bosnia to Iraq etched into my bones. In 2021, I bought a 10-acre plot in Pine Hollow, a rural Dallas suburb where the air smells of hay and the stars still shine bright. My ranch-style home came with a barn for my 3 horses, Dusty, Belle, and Maverick, a garden for my late wife's roses, and a weathered Army flag I'd flown over my last outpost in Baghdad. The $200 monthly HOA fees were supposed to keep our dirt roads graded and the community well-running. For 3 years, it was quiet. Neighbors waved, kids played in the fields, and I spent my days mending fences or riding Maverick along the creek. Then Victor Hargrove showed up, and Pine Hollow turned into a war zone. Victor was 45, a former real estate agent with a fake smile, a Rolex, and a habit of calling everyone partner. He took over as HOA president in January 2025, promising to modernize Pine Hollow. By February, a 50-page community standards packet arrived in our mailboxes. No livestock visible from the road. My horses were suddenly unsightly. No gardens over 100 square feet. My roses were non-compliant. No flags unless HOA approved. My Army flag didn't make the cut. Victor hired a crew of enforcement officers, for ex-bouncers in Navy jackets with Pine Hollow HOA stitched in yellow, driving black pickup trucks with flashing amber lights. They'd roll through at dawn, snapping photos of my barn, my horses, even my tractor. Fines started small, $100 for my flag, $150 for excessive garden space, but they piled up fast. Most folks paid to avoid trouble. I didn't. I'd stared down enemy snipers. Victor's fines weren't going to break me. The first real strike came on February 8, 2025. I woke to the smell of smoke, my horses whinnying in panic. I bolted outside in my boots and boxers, the sky glowing orange. My barn was ablaze, flames licking the roof, hay bales inside fueling the fire. Dusty reared in his stall, Belle kicking the door, Maverick's eyes wide with fear. I grabbed a hose, but it was too late. The barn was a goner. As I led the horses to a safe paddock, I saw Victor's black truck parked down the road, amber lights off. One of his goons, Dwayne, a 38-year-old bruiser with a buzz cut, watching through binoculars. A $2,500 fine was taped to my mailbox. Unpermitted structure, fire hazard. They'd burn my barn and blame me for it. I called the fire department, but by the time they arrived, the barn was ash, $15,000 in tools and feed gone. The fire chief, a gruff old-timer named Hank, found traces of kerosene near the foundation. "This wasn't an accident, Caleb," he said, shaking his head. "You got enemies." I knew who. Victor's truck was gone, but I'd seen Dwayne's face. His smirk burned into my memory as clearly as the flames. My fines hit $4,000 by mid-February, each notice threatening to seize my land if I didn't pay. I went to the HOA meeting on February 15th, all 6 feet 1 inch of me in my old Army cap, and faced Victor in the community barn, a drafty space with hay bales for seats. 40 neighbors sat quietly, their faces tight. Victor stood at a folding table, his Rolex glinting, his goons lining the walls. "Your barn was a violation, Dawson," Victor said, tapping his clipboard. "We warned you. Fire's on you." I stepped closer, voice low. "Kerosene says otherwise, Hargrove." You burned my barn, scared my horses. That's arson. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Victor laughed, sharp and hollow. Prove it, partner. Rules are rules. A few neighbors nodded at me, support, but cautious. Most stayed silent, afraid of their own fines. I left the meeting, the night air cold, and walked past the charred skeleton of my barn. This wasn't about rules. It was about power. I called Tommy Buck Reynolds, leader of the Red River Ranchers, a crew of veterans and cowboys I'd ridden with for years. We'd met at rodeos, bonded over scars and stories, and helped each other through hard times. Buck, I said, my voice steady. HOA torched my barn, fining everyone to death. They're coming for the land. I need the crew. Buck's reply was instant. We're riding in, Hawk. They picked the wrong fight. The next morning, February 16th, 2025, I saddled Maverick and rode the perimeter of my land, checking for more trouble. My cameras, installed after a $300 fine for unapproved fencing, caught Dwayne at 3 a.m., tossing a kerosene can into my compost pile. I saved the footage, my gut tightening. This was personal, but it wasn't just me. Victor's enforcers were hitting everyone. I started knocking on doors, my army cap swapped for a Stetson to blend in. Stories poured out, each one worse than the last. Mrs. Clara Hensley, 76, lived on 5 acres with her goats and chickens. She'd been fined $3,200 for unauthorized livestock, her coop spray-painted with violation in red. They came at night. Caleb, she whispered, her hands wringing a dish towel, said they'd take my land if I didn't pay. The Millers, a young family of 4, faced $2,800 for their kids' treehouse. Victor's goons tore it down while the kids watched, crying. Old man Jenkins, 80, a Vietnam vet, got $4,000 in fines for his rusty tractor, his only way to plow his fields. I can't afford this, he told me, his voice cracking. They're killing us. By February 20th, I documented 15 families, $28,000 in fines, all for nonsense. Chickens, tree houses, even unapproved mailboxes. Victor's goons were relentless, showing up at midnight, banging on doors, leaving threatening notes. Clara found a $5,000 lien notice on her gate. The Millers got a $3,500 1-4 property devaluation. Jenkins' tractor was towed, a $6,000 fine pinned to his porch. My cameras caught more. Dwayne photographing Clara's goats at 2 a.m., another goon, Mitch, slashing Jenkins' tires. Victor himself drove by my place, leaning out his truck window. Pay up, Dawson, or your horses are next, he called, his Rolex flashing. I flipped him off, but my blood ran cold. He wasn't bluffing. That night, I met Buck at a diner off Route 66, his F-250 parked out front, a cattle brand on the hood. He was 58, a former Green Beret with a scar across his cheek from a bull riding mishap. 4 Red River ranchers joined us. Ellie Saddle Monroe, 45, a Navy vet and horse trainer. Nate Rusty Carter, 49, an Air Force mechanic. Clara Doc Vargas, 50, a combat medic. And Jim Tex Lawson, 72, a Korean War vet who'd taught me to rope. I laid out the evidence. 15 fines, $28,000, kerosene footage, tire slashing video. Ellie's eyes narrowed. This ain't about rules, Hawk. They're shaking us down. Rusty nodded, scrolling my footage. We need more proof. Where's the money going? Tex sipped his coffee, voice low. Reminds me of land grabs in the 50s, scare folks, force sales, buy cheap. Bet Hargrove's got a buyer. Buck spread a map of Pine Hollow, marking hit properties. We start with Clara, he said, circling her place. Get statements. Dig into HOA finances. I'll check county records. Ellie grinned. I'll tail these enforcers. Let's see what they're hiding. I felt the old ranger instinct kick in. Victor wanted a siege. He'd get a counterattack. Over the next week, I rode to every neighbor, my Stetson low, recording their stories. Clara's fines hit $5,800. Her goats gone, sold off by Victor's crew. The Millers were at $4,200, their kids too scared to play outside. Jenkins faced a $7,000 lien, his tractor still impounded. Ellie caught Mitch planting a fake condemned sign on Jenkins' barn, her camera snapping his face. Rusty tailed Victor to a Dallas steakhouse, overhearing him pitch Pine Hollow to a developer. Prime land, cheap, once these hicks clear out. Every piece fit. Victor was forcing us out, fining us into submission, aiming to sell our land to a big-money developer for millions. March 1st, 2025, started peaceful, the kind of Texas morning where the sun gilds the fields and coffee tastes like hope. I was in my paddock, brushing Belle, her chestnut coat gleaming, when I heard tires crunch gravel. Victor's black truck rolled up, amber lights flashing, Dwayne and Mitch stepping out, navy jackets gleaming, Pine Hollow HOA. Victor followed, his suit crisp, a new fine in hand. $3,000 for livestock violations. Dwayne held a cattle prod, its tip sparking, eyeing my horses. "Move him out, Dawson," Victor said, smirking. "Or we will." Mitch kicked over a water trough, the crash spooking Dusty, who reared, hooves slashing air. I dropped the brush, my pulse hammering like an RPG. Every instinct screamed to fight. 20 years in war zones don't fade. But I saw Clara's house down the road, her curtains twitching. If I swung, Victor would twist it, call the cops, paint me as the aggressor. "You're on my land," I said, voice low, each word a bullet. "Leave." Victor laughed, tossing the fine at my feet. "Pay up, or your nags are gone." Dwayne jabbed the prod toward Maverick, the horse snorting, backing into the fence. They left, tires kicking dust, but the threat lingered like smoke. I stood there, trough water soaking my boots, Belle's flank trembling under my hand. I'd led men through ambushes, taken fire in Fallujah, but this hit different. My horses were my peace, my tether to a life after war. Victor wasn't just after my land. He was after my soul. I called Buck, my voice steady. "They're threatening my horses, Buck. I need the ranchers, now." He didn't hesitate. "We're coming, Hawk. Hold the line." By noon, 8 Red River ranchers rolled in, pickups and horse trailers shaking the road. Buck led, his F-250 rumbling, Ellie beside him with a rifle case. Rusty, Doc, Tex, and 3 others, Hank Rope Ellis, a Desert Storm vet, Maria Blaze Ortiz, an Iraq War pilot, and Sam Colt Turner, a Vietnam sniper, parked in my yard, their Stetsons casting long shadows. I played the footage, Dwayne's prod, Mitch's kick, Victor's smirk. Ellie swore, her hands tied on her case. "They touch my horses, they're done." Tex, his eyes hard, growled, "Disrespect a ranger's home? They're begging for a lesson." We set up in my kitchen, maps and laptops on the table, coffee brewing. Doc synced the footage, Rusty pulling county records. Buck dropped a bombshell. Victor's HOA collected $95,000 in fines, but only $5,000 went to roads or wells. The rest? Development fees to Hargrove Holdings, a shell company tied to Victor's brother, a Dallas developer named Greg Hargrove. "They're staging a land grab," Buck said, slamming the files down. "Fines, liens, sales, Victor's clearing Pine Hollow for condos." Ellie held up the cattle prod video, her voice cold. "This is personal, Hawk. We end it." We split tasks. Ellie and Rope would tail Victor's goons, quietly. Doc and Blaze would collect neighbor statements. Rusty and Colt would dig deeper into Greg Hargrove's deals. Tex and I would secure my place. New locks, cameras, electric fencing for the paddock. "This is for all of Pine Hollow," Buck said, his hand on my shoulder. "We're not losing this land." I looked at my horses, safe for now, and felt the old fire. Victor wanted a war. He'd get the whole damn cavalry. The next week was a blur of diesel fumes, hoofbeats, and late-night talks. Rusty hit the county clerk's office, pulling HOA records back to 2020. By March 7th, he had proof. Since Victor took over, Pine Hollow collected $95,000 in fines, but $90,000 went to Hargrove Holdings, funding a condo project called Pine Crest Estates. Greg Hargrove's name was all over the permits, his company already buying out 2 foreclosed properties in Pine Hollow, both families who couldn't pay Victor's liens. "They're playing dirty," Rusty said, tossing the files down. "Force folks out, buy low, build high." Ellie's tailing paid off. Dwayne's no cop, she reported, showing a rap sheet. Assault, extortion, fired from a security gig for theft. Mitch had a history too, vandalism, DUIs, a warrant in Oklahoma. Victor's enforcers were hired muscle, their jackets ordered online. Blaze hacked into Greg's email, finding a thread with Victor. "Push harder on Dawson. His land's key for the entrance." They weren't just after Pine Hollow. They wanted my 10 acres to anchor their project, a gated community for Dallas elites. Neighbors came forward, their fear turning to fury. Clara Hensley invited me over, her kitchen smelling of cornbread, her eyes steel. They took my goats, she said, showing a $7,000 lien notice. I'm on a fixed income, Caleb. They'll take my home. I recorded her, promising justice. The Millers met us at their field, their kids playing nearby. They burned our treehouse after tearing it down, Mrs. Miller said, voice shaking. $5,000 in fines. We can't keep up. Jenkins, leaning on his walker, showed me a $9,000 lien, his tractor still gone. I fought for this country, he said, eyes wet. Now I'm losing my land. Doc and Blaze hit 12 houses, building a dossier. 15 victims, $38,000 in fines, for liens, all targeting the elderly or struggling families. Rope caught Mitch planting a fake foreclosure sign on the Miller's gate, his camera rolling. Colt tailed Victor to a Dallas penthouse, overhearing him confirm a $5 million deal with Greg's investors, contingent on clearing Pine Hollow by May. Every piece fit. Victor fined us into ruin, forced liens, and planned to sell our land to his brother's firm, splitting the profits. Buck filed police reports, arson, vandalism, fraud, but Victor's cousin, a county deputy, could stall them. We need the community, Buck said. The March 20th HOA meetings are shot. We met nightly at my place, planning the showdown. Blaze printed flyers, coded to avoid Victor's spies. Fight back, March 20th, 10 a.m. Doc coached victims to speak, their voices shaky but growing bold. Text trained neighbors to watch for goons. They'll try to scare us, he warned. Stand tall. I walked Pine Hollow at dusk, passing Clara's empty pens, the Miller's scorched treehouse spot, Jenkins' bare field. My army flag hung in my window, a reminder. Victor thought he owned us. He didn't know the Red River ranchers. March 20th, 2025, broke clear and warm, the kind of Texas day that smells of spring and second chances. I stood by my paddock, coffee in hand, my army flag back on its pole, daring Victor to try again. At 9:30 a.m., 10 pickups and horse trailers rolled into Pine Hollow, the Red River ranchers arriving with dust and purpose. Buck led, his F-250 rumbling, Ellie's rifle case gleaming. Doc, Rusty, Tex, Rope, Blaze, Colt, and 2 more, Lena Spur Hayes, a Gulf War vet, and Mike Bronco Fields, a rodeo champ, parked by the community barn, American and Army flags snapping from their trucks. Inside, 50 neighbors packed the barn, more than any meeting in years. Clara Hensley sat front row, her goat photo clutched tight. The Millers stood with their kids, eyes fierce. Jenkins leaned on his walker, his Vietnam pin shining. Victor stood at the folding table, his suit wrinkled, sweat beading, Dwayne and his goons. Mitch, Kurt, and a new guy, Vince, huddled behind him. Cattle prods clipped to belts, faces pale. The air buzzed, like before a stampede. Victor banged a gavel, voice thin. This is a homeowners meeting. Non-residents, out. Buck stepped up, bylaws in hand. Section 4. Guests allowed with invites. We're invited. He tossed invites signed by 20 neighbors, Victor's mouth twitching. I took the mic, my boots loud on the dirt floor. I'm Caleb Dawson, Army Ranger, retired. Victor Hargrove's fake HOA goons burned my barn, threatened my horses, and tried to steal our land. I plugged my laptop to a projector, playing the barn fire video, February 8th, 2025, for 12 a.m., Dwayne tossing kerosene, flames rising, my horses screaming. Gasps filled the barn, neighbors leaning forward, some covering mouths. Clara stood, her voice clear. They took my goats, fined me $7,000. I'm 76. They said they'd take my home. She held up her photo, empty pens in the background. Mrs. Miller followed, her kids beside her. They burned our treehouse, scared my kids, $5,000 in fines for loving our land. Jenkins gripped his walker, voice shaking. They towed my tractor, $9,000 to get it back. I'm 80, a vet. Who gave them the right? Buck took the stage, projecting financials. Victor's collected $95,000 in fines since January. Only $5,000 fixed our roads. The rest? Wired to Hargrove Holdings, his brother Shell, for condos. He flipped to emails, Greg's name circled. Pinecrest Estates. Our land, their profit. Ellie played more footage. Dwayne with the cattle prod. Mitch planting a fake sign. Kurt tailing Jenkins to the feed store. Doc held up 15 victim statements. $38,000 in fines for liens. This is a land grab, Buck said, slamming down police reports. Arson, vandalism, fraud, filed yesterday. Victor's done. The crowd roared, chairs scraping as neighbors stood, clapping, some crying. Clara hugged Mrs. Miller. Jenkins raised a fist. I faced Victor, his face gray. You thought you could burn us out. Farmers, families, vets. You thought wrong. I pointed to the ranchers, their arms crossed, flags behind them. This is Pine Hollow, our land, not your casino. Victor tried to speak, his voice a rasp. Misunderstandings, I swear. But the crowd drowned him, chanting, out, out. A man threw a crumpled fine at the table, others following, paper flying like confetti. Dwayne bolted for the back door, but Ellie blocked him, camera flashing. Smile, arsonist, she said. Police sirens wailed outside. Buck's reports had hit. Victor fled to his truck, tires screeching, but it didn't matter. By March 25th, he was arrested in Dallas, facing arson and fraud charges. Dwayne got cuffed for outstanding warrants. Mitch and Kurt vanished. Greg's condo deal collapsed. Hargrove Holdings under audit. We elected Clara president. Her goat photo on the HOA wall. The Millers rebuilt their treehouse. No fines. Jenkins got his tractor back. Fees waived after Buck's legal threats. The ranchers led a community barn raising, rebuilding mine bigger, stronger, with a flagpole for my Army emblem, flying high. Pine Hollow wasn't just fields and fences anymore. It was us, neighbors, fighters, family. That's how Pine Hollow fought back against fake HOA goons who thought they could burn us out and steal our land. I'm Caleb Hawk Dawson, and I learned something in those weeks of fire and fury. A community's only as strong as the folks who stand together. Victor Hargrove's gone, his scam buried, but the scars, my barn, Clara's goats, the Miller's treehouse, remind us to stay vigilant. We built a new barn, not just for me, but for every neighbor who said, no more. My Army flag flies proud, and Pine Hollow feels alive again. Kids playing, horses grazing, laughter echoing over fields. If you've ever faced an HOA tyrant, you know this fight's universal. I hope our story inspires you to stand tall, fight back, and protect what's yours. Thanks for listening, folks. This one's for you, for us, for Pine Hollow. Keep fighting the good fight, and I'll see you in the next one.